The discussion of the day will be moderated by Dr. Zipporah Okoth. Dr. Zipporah Okoth is a Don. I like using that word because we at the University of Nairobi like using that. She is a lecturer at KCA University. She's a lecturer of film and performing arts. And she's also an award-winning filmmaker, right? And the founder of an organization known as Lake International Pan-African Film Festival. She has participated as an executive committee member in cultural festival at the Ministry of Sports and Heritage. She has a long and very, can I say, very prestigious CV. Permit me to welcome Dr. Zipporah Okoth with a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Winnie. Hi, everyone. I believe we are ready for this discussion. To our online audience, I hope you're also I'll go straight to the point. First, we have Honorable John Kiarie Waweru. KJ, as we know him, is a Kenyan politician. He's a member of parliament representing the South constituency. And I will not say the political party. Those ones change very fast, right? He was part of the Ridiculous Show, one of the founding members of the Ridiculous Show. And that is one of the shows that really shaped Kenyan politics during that time. He ran a comedy cartoon strip on the Sunday Nation Buzz magazine. He's also worked as an art director at Ogilvy. Ogilvy is one of the advertisement industries companies in this country. In 2017, he threw himself into the elective politics, fronting himself under the Jubilee Party to become member of parliament for Dagoretti South. Let's welcome him, please. Yes, choose your seat of preference. And then we have Drew Giblin. John Drew Giblin serves as an acting counselor for public affairs at the U.S. Embassy in Nairobi. He is a 16-year veteran of the Foreign Service, and he previously led sections as public affairs officer at both the U.S. Embassy in Zagreb, Croatia, and the U.S. He's a consulate general he's been in the U.S., consulate general in India. Oh, it's in India. In Croatia, Drew worked to strengthen Euro-Atlantic solidarity and enhance security cooperation. In India, he led initiatives to advance the U.S.-India defense partnerships, support increased U.S.-India co-production in the defense industry, and bolster business ties between the U.S. and India. Prior to joining the Foreign Service, he worked in corporate communications for global PR firm Fleischmann Hillard in his hometown in Atlanta, Georgia. Karibu sana. And then we have Ambassador Dr. Thomas Kwaka Omolo, HSC. Yeah. Ambassador Dr. Thomas Kwaka Omolo, HSC, has a diverse career in diplomacy, brand strategy, youth engagement, design, and politics. He served as Kenya's Consul General to Los Angeles in the USA, which enhanced bilateral relations and strengthened the political, economic, and cultural ties of the two countries. He has served as the Director of Brand Strategy and Events at the Office of the President and was honored with the prestigious Head of State Commendation, the HSC, for outstanding contribution in public perception and enhancing the image and influence of the President. If we remember the previous regime, that was his work. Dr. Kwaka also served as chairman of the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC, pre-election campaign 2022 dubbed as Elections Bill and Norma campaign. He has received a honorary doctorate from the Fulbright Seminary in Seattle in leadership, among many other awards. And as a creative, he used to organize the biggest music and performance shows in this country before he joined politics. Tafadhali karibisha Ted Kwaka, Ambassador. Then we have Miss Angela Ndambuki, advocate of the High Court. Angela Ndambuki. She's the regional director for the International Federation of the Phonographic Industry, Phono, guys. And I am stressing that. Yeah, there's a H in between for Sub-Saharan Africa. She has 15 years of experience in the creative industry leadership, focusing on policy making, collective management, and intellectual property enforcement. She has also served as the CEO of the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry and chairperson of the Intellectual Property Committee at the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Angela has received several awards, such as Honoree Billboard Women in Music 2024, Global IP Leader by World Intellectual Property Rights 2023 Directory, Top 50 Leading African Corporate Women by Leading Ladies Africa, among many others. She is also an accomplished author, composer, performer, and producer of sound recordings. If you're a millennial, you will remember the song. Maybe she'll say a line and the Gen Zs will understand. Ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to start. I'll go straight to the questions. And as you answer the questions, you can start by praising yourself a little more if I didn't mention that accolade that you have achieved in the creative industry. As we know, Kenya is right now at 61 years of post-independence, but that is almost the same time that we have had US-Kenya collaborations. So when we look at the milestone of US-Kenya collaborations, we're also looking at our journey through independence in the creative industry. So I'd just like to ask, do you have any personal experience or reflections on the impact of the collaborations or of our journey to this moment? Yes. I'll start with the lady, since last is best.
Thank you. KJ was already ready to go. So, but yes, I think for 60 years, some of us were not even born, but we could at least be able to give our experience from when we began, at least being in this industry, in the creative industry. As you mentioned, I've been in this industry. I began as a musician as well as an actor, even from my younger age. And I think just being able to grow in the creative industry has made me who I am today, from being a lawyer. And it's very weird that a lawyer can actually even be a creative at the same time. I remember those days I used to be asked, are you serious about law if you're really doing music? But today it's actually a norm, And I think that the US has really played a very important role in those 60 years. I mean, from post-independence, and I know those programs like Fulbright, who some of us really wanted to be able to guide us in this profession. We've been able to work, especially now with the US interactions. As IFPI, we are the voice of the global recording industry. We work very closely with RIAA, which is the Recording Industry Association of America. And I think those collaborations have really been critical in establishing the recording industry here in Kenya. They have been very supportive and giving us interactions and just being able to ensure that the right thing is being done, even engaging with the US Embassy here when we have issues, and being able to assist at least, for example, the collective management issues that we have right now with the government. I think even as CAMP, I also have another hat as the chairperson of the Kenya Association of Music Producers, but now CAMP Copyright and Related Rights, which is the collective management organization. And just recently, I think just 2 weeks ago, is it last week, we approved a list of nominees who are supposed to be going to take part to the AMP program, the music mentorship program, being able to have mid-career professionals in music to be able to go to the US and have skill building, and which is really critical. So at least throughout those days, I never used to have, I wasn't privy to what was happening then, but I think more and more the US Embassy is really, really playing a very important role, and the US is really, really coming to Kenya to be able to support the creative industry, and for me, particularly the recording industry, the music industry.
KJ, I'd like you now to speak more. What our side as Kenyans are we putting in? She's really said what the US is doing for us. We want to know what our country we are doing.
I really thank you. And I want to thank the organizers of this dialogue. And to be here hosted at the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences at the University of Nairobi is itself an honor. And especially to come here and learn that there is an African Center for the study of matters US and Kenya, and to have that discussion, having a full room on this very cold Wednesday morning, I think it's a great honor to be a panelist here today. As Wakili has said, 50 years, half a century plus 10 is a long time. And Kenya and the US go way back. I don't remember exactly, I'm trying to recall in my mind what the red plate at the US Embassy reads, but I think they are around number 20 something, not 21, 29, if I'm not wrong. That means that the US was among the first countries to recognize Kenya as an independent country when we got our independence. And Kenya and the US have walked that long journey since independence through very tumultuous times and also very good times. You would imagine as independence, Kenya is coming out from being a British colony. And there are a lot of geopolitics playing at around that time. And soon after, we are plunged into what you would call the Cold War. And again, there is a re-scramble for Africa at that time. And we come out of that and come into this big clamor for multi-party in the 80s and the 90s. And around that time, you're seeing a very serious US presence in Kenya. I would remember I was a young person in primary school then, must have been in standard 6 or 7. But I remember the American ambassador leading the protests, he himself from the front, the protests that had been led by people like Bishop Timothy Njoya back then in the clamor for multi-party politics, meaning that the US is intricately intertwined in the business and the affairs of this country. And even if we're seeing it from a political angle, a geopolitical angle, there is a lot of art and culture and storytelling throughout this journey. Now, where some of us were onboarded was when I was in university. And the man you see right there is the man I credit from taking me from a university stage at Harambee Hall at the Kenyatta University and putting me on a national stage. Big Ted took Ridiculous and introduced us to the world through a show that used to be at the Carnival. It was called the Comedy Night. And the gentleman you see there was an event organizer back then. And he saw these 3 young, enterprising, new comedians. And he said to us, you need to be on that stage. And after that moment, we were on the road for, I think, 2 or 3 years. And somebody told us that you need to take your show international. And we got an invite to go to the US in the summer of 2000. And Kenya remembers well, 3 comedians with metal boxes at the airport, boarding a plane to go and do shows in the summer of 2000. And we went to the US, and 2 very profound things happened to my life out of this tour. The first thing is the exposure that we got out of this tour. We were able to do more than 50 capitals, 50 cities on that one tour. I remember we were doing road trips, we were flying across capitals, but a profound thing happened because our audiences were predominantly African audiences. Someone saw us in one of the shows and told us we will need to test your shows for an international audience. And we were plunged into the deep end. We were taken to this extremely exclusive island off the coast of Boston called Martha's Vineyard. And we were presented at Martha's Vineyard to this all-American audience. And we had to craft a show, 2 hours long show. We are Kenyans, first time in the US, and we had a standing room only show at Martha's Vineyard. And I dare say we aced it. And out of it, we got an opportunity to tour Hollywood. It was my first time to go to Hollywood. And that exposure was something that I take for all my life. The second most profound thing was at university, I had just come out of training in ICT, Information, Communication, and Technology. which was the diploma that I took in my gap year before university. And when we were at the US, first of all, the shows were very lucrative. That one show, we made a lot of money in dollars. And I remember we said that we should reward ourselves. And one of the things that we wanted to buy were computers for ourselves. So when we went to these computer shops, Walter went for a PC computer. Something told me that I should go for an Apple. And I went for a MacBook back then. I wanted a MacBook because I thought with a MacBook, I'll be able to design posters for shows. I'll be able to do some art. And I got myself a MacBook. And let me tell you the experience that I have with that MacBook. I still keep it to date. It was my first computer that I bought. It introduced me to this whole new world of big tech in America, because now I became interested to see what is happening at Silicon Valley. And I took that with me throughout the years, that by the time the iPhone came, I got the first iPhone, and I've never used any other phone since then. And to remember that I used to teach computers before then, and we were teaching MS-DOS back in our years, we were teaching PCs. I was a convert. And the story I'm trying to tell here, ZP, is that out of the USA's dominance in spaces of culture and in spaces of tech, Kenya has gotten opportunities to tell its stories, but also has gotten platforms that have enabled so many creatives in Kenya to tell their stories, because every generation has a platform. Our generation told our stories through TV and radio. Successive generations used the internet. Other generations that are coming up today are on platforms that are developed in Silicon Valley, in the US. So there are people who are telling their stories today on YouTube. There are people who are telling their stories on Meta platforms. There are people today who are telling their stories on X and so on. So basically, the US-Kenya partnership goes beyond the small frame of just the US partnership on, as you described it, on the creative industry. I thank you, Zipi.
Thank you very much. I think he has used storytelling really well. Ted, because you were mentioned, before we go to Drew, because you were mentioned, I told you this guy was a big event organizer during his time, and you can see that his products are now politicians. So Ted, tell us about the journey now that you've been an ambassador and you took people to the States. You worked in Kenya, and now you have represented Kenya in Los Angeles, one of the biggest hubs for the creative industry in the US. Tell us how your experiences and how the collaboration of Kenya and the US has really impacted our creative industry.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'm not that old. Like I've been here since the beginning of time. My love and interest with America came growing up and watching American programs on TV. And I would dare say that a big host of Kenyan youth aspire and dream to even just set foot in the United States of America. If you ask any musician, they will tell you that that's the direction. If you ask any movie maker, they will tell you they want to go to Hollywood. And one of the most surprising things, disappointing things, Drew, was coming to Hollywood and finding out that Hollywood is not necessarily a street. It's actually a culture, you know. It's not necessarily, and they would ask me, where are the celebrities? And I dare say I've seen more celebrities than many people who live in Hollywood. But one of the biggest things I think we can credit this relationship in 60 years is the cultural absorption that we've had. And I dare say that America has heard a lot about Kenya through culture, the same way that Kenya has heard about America. So for example, I land in the States and I go to this big studio, and one of the songs I play for them is by Wakadinali, who are Kenya's emerging drill hip hop group. And nobody can tell the difference. And they were actually shocked that this is a group out of Kenya, you know, playing out there. Now, hip hop originally, the beats are African, but the style is actually based in America, and it's an American culture. So there's been a lot of assimilation of culture running across. I would tell you about days I would spend in different places listening to people playing drums, African drums, the djembe, you know, on the streets, and listening to it and thinking about it. So there's been a lot, and I would like to leverage on cultural diplomacy, which those of us in the diplomacy circles call people-to-people diplomacy. And that is what I'd want to credit the biggest beneficiary of anything that America and Kenya and America has experienced, has been people-to-people. And we've managed to tell our stories over time. One of the first groups I know which toured the States from Kenya was the Africa Heritage Group. Many of you probably were not born, but during that time, the African Heritage was a big store in Nairobi, which basically had all these artifacts. And they did a whole tour of the United States showcasing our culture, our food, our fashion, and our music. Now, out of it came Kenya's most toured group in America, which is Jabali Africa, who have toured for the last, I think, 20 years in the States, in different universities and colleges and everything. And they would go to different schools to teach the students how not only to play the drum, but about our culture. So people-to-people diplomacy. And of course, athletics is still our flagship brand, which we push out in the States. We just had the LA Marathon the other day and the Boston Marathon, of course, won by Kenya. Everybody else comes second and third. And then now, with the onset of the Sevens rugby circuit, and the Kenya team right now playing this week in LA at the LA Sevens, it's a big thing. So we have had different facets of the Kenyan culture and psyche being instilled in America. The same way the American psyche has been instilled to us through music, TV shows, and TV programs. And over the last few years, we've had a lot of American celebrities coming into Kenya, not only to learn, but also to run a couple of programs and projects. And we actually have a couple who are here right now, and we intend to continue deepening it more. So I think the 60 years, while can be judged, or you can look at it from a trade perspective, we in the creative economy are also looking at the creative economy as part of trade. And we are saying that these investments that also are being put in the creative economy are also subject, and in case you didn't know, investment in the creative economy, which we shall do in a few minutes' time, is also subject to the Kenya Investment Authority incentives. So as an investor in the creative, you also get great incentives. I'm sure we shall come to that in a few minutes' time. I think I'll let it slide for now. The politician already did his 20 minutes.
Thank you, Ted. I'll just go to Drew. Drew, now give us what America has really done.
Yeah, it's really wonderful to be here to address the relationship like everyone did with such passion and emotion. I just would note, it goes without saying, Kenya is absolutely a leading U.S. partner in Africa across multiple fields: security, the economy, shared values, and Africa is rising. We know that 1 in 4 human beings on Earth will be African in 2050, 1 in 3 working age people. The future of the world is wrapped up in the decisions that will be made by Kenya's young people, the innovators here. We are absolutely invested in that. Our team is here today from the embassy, and our job is to help build out that partnership further. And I'll use Winnie, who is a wonderful partner and ally in that regard. We work with Winnie, and this center is super important to sharing what the relationship is about with the United States. But Winnie herself is an example of how we try to accomplish this. She spent time in the United States in higher education, and in building relationships, understanding the dynamics between us. There's nothing more powerful than that. You've all referenced experiences in the United States. I can't beat that as a diplomat. So that wins every time. And like you said, sir, the people-to-people diplomacy is bigger than governments. It's bigger than us representatives, and that's a good thing. But my goal today, as we talk about these very important issues, exciting issues, positive issues, is to address three things. The power of Kenya's creative market, the power of American creative brands and innovation, and then the power of shared interests between the United States and Kenya in this regard. And Big Ted touched upon the beginnings of that. So just in a real quick summary, I know we'll talk through these issues, but when it comes to Kenya's market, you asked, what's your connection to this? I'm a garage band drummer, so I do have a passion for music. And I worked in corporate communications and PR, and so a piece of the business there. But to be honest, I'm a diplomat. I'm a very faithful and passionate bureaucrat. I am not a creative leader. So what am I doing working in this really exciting moment of creative industries? And the reason is the market. Just a few examples. I arrived here in 2023. The NBA had just opened offices in Kenya. A film studio by the name of Invention from Hollywood worked towards an agreement with the government because they cared about making Kenyan films that are supportive of what they're trying to accomplish in terms of art and business. The Grammys have made a priority of expanding in Africa, and Kenya is clearly important to them. And those are just a few examples. And so we, as diplomats, were taking indicators from the American leaders who said, Kenya matters, and Kenya is a marketplace that's exciting and dynamic. So that's the power of Kenya's creative market, and why we U.S. diplomats are engaged in this. And so that touches upon America's creative brands. One thing I'll say that's really important is, and I don't ever want to lose sight of something that was said at the opening, which is that the creative industries speak to the soul. I will tell you something, as somebody who worked in corporate PR, not many businesses do that. So it is special, it is different, it is powerful, and I think it matters to young people in ways that go beyond jobs, although the economic impact is something I really want us to focus on today. But when it comes to the economy of creative industries, this is a $1 trillion business in the United States of America with a T. Okay, so it is a massive mover of investment and jobs and economic activity. Not to mention the influence that the industry and artists themselves have, the platforms they build to communicate about all sorts of things. So when you're connected to that industry anywhere, but certainly the biggest one in the world, which is from the United States, it's powerful. And you all noted that Kenya has a deep and intimate connection to that culture of creative economy in America already. You've been a part of it for a long time, and we're proud and privileged to be a part of you. And I would note, I think U.S. industries look for regeneration to partners, and I've heard Hollywood executives tell me that they feel like there's new energy in filmmaking here that they haven't seen anywhere, and that actually can jazz and energize their efforts back in the States. I think there's no bigger compliment than that. And then the last piece is the power of shared interest, and this is really important. It gets back to why I'm sitting here as a bureaucrat with a bunch of folks who are focused on creative industry, and that is there is a shared interest here. The argument I think we're all making here today is that Kenya's creative space is vital, it's powerful, it's emotional, it's inspiring, and it's also economically viable. I'm not an economist, but there's estimates that up to 5% of GDP come from creative economy here in Kenya. It could be more, absolutely should be more. I think if you amp up what's here and what's possible. And so the idea here is, can American creative firms that want to be here partner up with Kenyan artists who have the capability to be world-class, already are? Is there a bridge to be built where we both benefit in new ways and that new things are created in the process? And I think it absolutely ends with more Kenyan leadership and more U.S. partnership with Kenya in the long run. So I think that's my starter summary.
Thank you very much. From that introduction, we have even answered our earlier on question number 1. So I'll go to the next question. We have already answered how we have evolved. So I'll just go to the opportunities. What opportunities exist for the US and Kenyan investors? Ted, I'll start with you because you were just there the other day. So tell us so that the creatives in this room or the ones listening can know. Wakimbie huko now. to grab those opportunities, and those ones they also come here right now to grab these opportunities. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Opportunities exist everywhere. It just depends with where you're looking and what state of mind you have when you're looking. One of the things I keep on encouraging the creatives in Kenya, in East Africa, and in Africa is the simple saying that says that until the lion learns how to write, all the stories of the hunt will glorify the hunter. And one of the things I keep on insisting is you as a creative need to start looking at things from your side. East and Central Africa has 763 million people. Netflix worldwide has 230 million people. With the emerging IT and technological advancements that Africa is having, and especially Kenya with M-Pesa and other technological platforms, you stand a bigger opportunity breaking into this market. Now, how does the American influence come in? We are now leveraging, and would like to thank the American government for the partnerships in IT and technology, because that is very, very key for us. Helping us to build infrastructure, helping us to monetize, helping us to make sure that our products get out there into the right markets. One of the things that I kept running into is the whole issue of cultural difference. For example, you make a movie, and for the purposes of conversation, I will take our friends from down the road, Nigeria, and the movie has all this, the usual scenes in Nigerian movies. What do you think they're always in Nigerian movies? One, there's always a witchcraft. There's always a pastor. There's always a beautiful girl. There's always a man who loves this beautiful girl, but the rich guy doesn't want. Now, for example, you may find it a bit hard to sell that particular narrative to an American audience, but it's very, very easy to sell it to an African audience which understands the concept that you're trying to push. So what do we need? We need good distribution infrastructure. We need good production facilities. We need to know, and this is a story, this is something I've been told every time I made a pitch in Hollywood or in the States about anything to do with Kenya. They told me that you guys have rich history, but you don't know how to tell your story. And I think probably that needs to be an area that we can learn. Hollywood is all about telling stories. You know, it starts very simple, but it runs for 2 hours. Just a guy in a room, and the whole movie is about a guy in a room. So we are able to tell all these stories. Look at Wakanda. Wakanda is a mixture of different stories from all over Africa, but it's told with so much flair. Kenya, with more than 47 tribes, with 10 Wakanda stories each, is 470. We have never told even one. So there, right there, exists an opportunity for us as Kenyans to be able to tell our story with world-class facilities and production for the international market, but packaged very, very well. I finish with this. I walk into this studio and I play a song by a very, very Kenyan group. And the producer looks at me and tells me, Ted, the problem is you are an outsider without an insider's view. And that is the next area, and I think we'll talk about it, collaboration. I have a whole lecture on collaboration and why I think collaboration between Kenya and the United States in a deeper sense is actually the key for the creative economy. I think I will rest there because I know I'll be back.
Angela, I just want to know, since you are already dealing in the international space, can you tell us what are the financial instruments and what is available there for the Kenyan investors? Ted has told us about, as creatives, what we need, but now, what do the investors need to know? What is there for them? What financial instruments can we bring in? Hiva Fund has been funding Kenyan creatives in many ways. We've had MasterCard call the other day, but how else can we ensure there are other financial investors coming in to invest in this creative industry?
Thanks, Zippy. Working in the investment space, I will tweak the question opposite to be able to talk about how can we be encouraged to ensure that investment happens in Kenya. I think it's really critical. If we talk about the creative industry in its entirety, you have the fashion industry, you have music, you have film. There's a lot to talk about. But really looking into this finance space is a critical arm to ensure that there's investment coming in and ensuring sustainability. At the end of the day, when you have an industry, it can only be sustainable if there's money flowing. So I think if we're able to look at it in a way that we have the US supporting, of course, various initiatives. I know right now what's happening in the country, like for example, if you look at the AU or Africa in general, we have the AFCFTA, for example, the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, where we are really looking into seeing how, as a region, as Africa, how can we work together and take advantage of this market. We have 1.4 billion people. A market that if there's the proper investment happening, then we can be able to thrive. I know initiatives by, Afrexim Bank, which is AU, like Canex, for example, really critical in areas of fashion, music, film, putting a lot of money and investing a lot of money. And there are these funds that the US, and I'm sure Drew will be able to speak a bit into this of what's available. But at the end of the day, the investors of these industries have to be taken care of. There is a return on investment. As IFPI, we released the Global Music Report year on year. This year, there was actually a 4.8% growth in the recording industry. We had a $29.6 billion US industry this year, as we indicated. But in Africa, and this is Africa, or rather sub-Saharan Africa, where I represent, which is 46 countries of the region, not including the North African countries. You can imagine we only had 110 million US dollars. This is less than 1% output for the recording industry globally. And yet we have countries like even Nigeria, who have Afrobeats. And Kenya, here we are coming with all these new genres, opportunities of having new genres to be able to get out there. This investment that's coming in, how can we ensure that the people who are actually investing in this music, investing in fashion, get a return on investments? We always talk about FDIs, foreign direct investments in terms of agriculture, in terms of other manufacturing. What about the creative industry? I think it's time, and I'm talking to my good friend here, governments who will be able to have proper policies in place to ensure that we have investments coming into the creative industry. As a producer, we take care of the people, actually the actual investors in the music industry. So there has been an issue, for example, with the digital space. We have tech right now, and I hope we'll get a chance even to discuss about new tech and what's happening, the challenges, especially if you talk about AI. We'll be able to see what can we be able to make sure that we have this return coming in, balance between the interests of the tech, balance between the interests of the rights holders to ensure that there's that sustainability going on. So I think in terms of the US and investments, Drew will be in a better position to give us what exactly the US has in investing, in injecting some investments there. But I think opportunities, AFCFTA at a regional level, and Kenya playing a really critical part, being even at the center. In Kenya, I think we are really, it's an advantage being here because we are central. You can say we're central to the region. I think between Kenya and the networks that we have in terms of flights, it's only like 5 hours to each part of the continent. So it's really a key area where we can be able to have any countries who want to come in and invest also in the other regions. It can be like a hub of Africa. So the presence of course, of all those DSPs, Ambassador just talked about the infrastructure. I think it's really critical. If we have all these Apple Music, YouTube, I know Google is already here, but Apple can be able to set up, we're able to have the creative parts of that. And all these US companies can be able to, work with governments to be able to build something for the creative industry to actually thrive. Grammys, we've heard about Grammys. We are encouraging them to actually decide on where to place this, the Grammy Center. Welcome to Kenya. Some of us, I know Big Ted has been working on this. So it's really, there's so much that's happening that we can actually leverage on from the different areas of the different creative industries. So I think I'll stop there.
Before I get to the politician, because I want to merge for him 2 questions, let me just ask Drew, what opportunities, what do the American investors want? Just to follow up on Angela.
Oh my gosh, Angela nailed it. So I think that's your answer in many ways. But yeah, so a few quick things. I think you're just right on it, noting this idea of FDI and how it's traditionally not including creative. And my gosh, there's an opportunity for Africa, certainly for Kenya, to think about that. And so, I just wrote down here, dynamic containers into which investment can flow. I mean, which is what you were all talking about. But I think there's a real opportunity here in Kenya. For us, and again, I'll say this over and over again, the power of the creative economy is that it's more than just business. It's passion, it's connection, it's communication. It brings people together globally. But commercialization is really important and needed. And at least that's how it worked for us. And it's only made the creative industries more powerful across society as they've grown as businesses in the United States. So that machinery is really important. The policy innovations around commercialization to provide that opportunity. I'd give you one example, not to stray into challenges, but sports. I mean, this place. So you have athletes who are human legends. Eliud Kipchoge, Faith, and so many others. So these are people that inspire all of us with what they've done and accomplished and who they are. And as you know, it's sort of become part of Kenya's brand in a way. But I'll say something, I say this very sensitively, but one of my first events when I came here was about sports in Kenya. And it seemed to revolve mostly around athletes leaving Kenya to go do things in other places. And there was almost nothing about the development of an industry here in Kenya that would also facilitate the success of those athletes and the success of the industry that creates opportunities not only for sports, but also for others connected to that. And so I think there's an opportunity there where what do sports industries look like here as they grow? I mean, you could apply that to any industry. For us, at least right now, we're working very hard from the U.S. side on a focus of music, sports, and film, because it seems like that's where where we're seeing that kind of market interest from the United States and folks that we've engaged with here. And we want to be conveners. We're bringing you together where we can with events and linking folks. We have folks that come from the capital space, the investors that can bring the resources, the creative leaders who are Kenyan, who have this incredible content, are looking for pathways, and then government officials and others who are maybe institutional. It doesn't have to be just government; it could be lawyers, but folks who build that infrastructure of a creative industry. And so Crystal and Jennifer and our team, we're working really hard to put those groups together over and over and over and over again, American and Kenyan, to make that magic happen where it's possible. And we'll keep doing that. And I'll close with a story real quick before I hand over the mic. And I hope I don't get in trouble for using his name. But David Aguka is a filmmaker. He was just featured, I think, on CNN, and he's based on the coast. And he's somebody I encountered as we were out meeting incredible creatives all over Kenya. And I use him as an example. He's a very successful filmmaker, and he's got some powerful series that are award-winning. But when he tells you the story of how he makes films, in a way, I feel like Kenya's success is how do you turn somebody like David Nguku, who's like at this level of success, but could go way further. But what are the pathways? What are the policy pathways? What are the infrastructure he needs? What's the investment path that he needs to grow from putting together a team of 200 to make a film series and then going back to scrambling for investment the next day? Could he somehow be head of a production house or part of an environment that has something more broad and global connection? So in a way, it's going from medium to big, from big to huge. Those types of elements, I think, would be advantageous.
Just to ride on what Ruth said, I think one of the things that we need to do, even as a country, before even the investors come in, is we need to believe in ourselves a bit more. And I would like to give you some facts. Kenya ticks all the boxes that any investor would want in the world. That is why the American government and the embassy here is busy trying to engage with us. If we didn't, I don't think this meeting would have been happening. That's number one. Number two, anybody who invests in anything goes in there for profit. And we already have the infrastructure with all our phones, and this is a first. So don't look down on yourself as a Kenyan. All our phones come ready with a wallet, which means anybody who's coming in Kenya to do anything already has a wallet, a financial wallet, which means they're able to draw from it. And just to go on to what Rabbit said, Rabo, sorry, we call her Rabbit. She talked about the 5-hour thing, but let me tell you, Kenya is the center or the door to Africa for anything. And let me help you take it home. We are 1 hour away. Why is it important for you to shoot in Africa or do anything in Africa? Nairobi is 1 hour away from everything. If you want to shoot a beach, we are 1 hour away. If you want to shoot a desert as good as the Sahara, Chalbi Desert is 1 hour away. If you want to shoot the highlands, which is unique to Kenya and the terrain in this part of the world, it looks like Brazil. It's 1 hour away. If you want to shoot a lake with tall, dark, handsome fellows, we're 1 hour away. We're 1 hour away from everything. So we have it. Now, the next step and level is what we shall talk, I think, in the next question. How do we make sure that we are ready, including the infrastructure? We're good. Looking at the currency, we're good. The political situation, we're good. The persuasion of people to come and invest here, we're good. Ladies and gentlemen, I make the case that Kenya is ready and we are right. But we just need, Drew, somebody to believe in us.
Thank you very much. Naona hiyo mmependa. So you start by believing in yourself. Okay, KJ. Mheshimiwa, I want you to tell us the opportunities that you believe as a country exist for us. Because right after that, I'm going to ask you the challenge with our policy.
I think for this discussion, I would see 2 immediate opportunities. The case that has been made by Big Tech might sound as if it's too far-fetched, but that's a reality. Kenya holds a very special place in the global scheme of things in the community of nations. And the 2 big opportunities I see for Kenya that are immediate are, one, in authenticity. Us seated here might be the last of the generation that logged in and logged out. We grew up at a time when we've seen how stories are told and influenced because of authenticity. When I was growing up, the biggest media offering that we would get then was from Europe. We were big on BBC. At some point, I remember Transtel came in a very big way. So BBC is British, Transtel is German, what eventually became Deutsche Welle. But beginning late 80s, coming into the 90s, there was a very big influence that came from the United States of America that even changed the culture in this country. We started seeing NBA on our TVs. We started seeing hip hop. And before we knew it, this culture looked a bit more attractive than what we were getting from Europe. The tragedy of that is that we all now attempted to be like the Americans. We wanted to do away with what we thought was archaic and primitive and traditional and try to look like the Americans. And I know Dr. Wambogo would associate with what I'm just about to say. In the tour that I mentioned, when we toured the United States of America, we were called upon by a great Kenyan, Eric Wainaina, At that time, Eric Wainaina was studying at the Berklee School of Music, this most prominent school of music, globally recognized. And he said to us, I only need an opportunity to come and curtain raise for you guys. You can imagine Eric Wainaina curtain raising for us. He was a big name then. And when we met Eric Wainaina at this show, he said to us only one thing. Eric Wainaina had come out of a group called Five Alive. And what Five Alive used to do, they were trying to be boys to men back then. They were trying to be crooners of R&B music. And Eric Wainaina said to us one very profound thing. He said, I grew up wanting to be like the Americans. I got here and I realized the best I can ever be as an American is second to an American. And it is that time that he got this realization that authenticity is a product you can sell. And you can see the Eric Wainaina before America and after America. After that, the music that Eric Wainaina was producing, we featured in an album that was called Sawa Sawa. Eric Wainaina produced his first big album in the US called Sawa Sawa. And what he did is he tried to borrow as much as he can from African traditional music, African traditional heritage, and African traditional cultural offerings. So the biggest opportunity I see for Kenyans is authenticity. Nobody is able to tell your story as well as you can. And if you try to tell the American story, the Chinese story, the European story, you will only be second to their offering. The second opportunity I see, which is big, is in applying the visual and performing arts to solutions. Go out there, find a problem, and try to artistically give a solution to that problem. And I can tell you the future of work, the future of trade, the future of employment is going to be in such a way that you shall be rewarded commensurate to the solutions that you offer to community, practical solutions. And I say this because as artists, we normally fall to the trap of producing art for art's sake. Unaambia msee, bana, awoni, ini art, abstract art, awoni. And you want to make this person see art in the way that you see art, but you're not giving a solution that is practical to a community. For example, the Dagoretti South constituency today is the first and only constituency to have a comprehensive school feeding program. Today, at lunchtime, we shall be serving lunch to 22,000 young people in our public schools. How does art and design come into this? For these children that we're serving lunch to, we do not give them a meal card. We have found that there is a solution in technology and in design. And so as the constituency, we have partnered with Food for Education, we have partnered with Safaricom, and we have partnered with an American company called Cisco, big tech. And the children in the Dagoretti South constituency are not having a meal card. They are wearing an armband. You've seen Governor Sakaja wearing an armband that is a meal card. That meal card came out of the Dagoretti South constituency school feeding program, where we are bringing together technology, we are bringing together design, and in this style, product design, to come up with something that is so cool. A child is so readily eager to wear this armband that is tapped to it, Food for Education meal card. And so the solution here is so big, but it is driven by tech, it is driven by innovation, it is driven by design. Finally, I had the opportunity to write on an issue that you brought up, Big Ted, on AI. And for my master's, I wrote on the influence of artificial intelligence on African traditional heritage and African culture. And my exploration found that if Africa does not step up right now, we stand to slip through another revolution. This is being called the fourth industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution shall be driven mainly by emerging technologies like AI, blockchain technology, the Internet of Things, cryptocurrency, and all these other things. The question is, what language shall these revolutions speak? Today, AI is scraping data out of the internet and using it to these open AI sources and others that are proprietary. The question is, what language is AI speaking today? Today, English is contributing 46.5% to the data and data sets that are making these big language models for AI. 46.5%. Germany comes a distant second, and other many small languages after that. So the question is, at what point will this fourth industrial revolution speak Gikuyu? At what point is it going to speak Dholuo? At what point is it going to speak Suba? And it is so important for artists and storytellers to know that at this point, if we are not onboarding our culture, our knowledge, our languages, our beliefs, at this point, very many languages are going to be wiped off the face of the earth. And they tell us that if anyone wants to disenfranchise you, the thing they do is they first take away your mother tongue, and secondly, they take away your father's name. Basically, you lose your culture, your beliefs, your identity by just losing a language and a culture. So the two big opportunities I see here are, one, to tell that very authentic KJ story, Gikuyu story, Nairobi story, Kenyan story, and African story in my very authentic language and onboard that to the fourth industrial revolution. Secondly, is to find the place where art and culture offers real solutions to real problems in the world today. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Now that we're already talking tech-savvy solutions, Angela, back to you. What are the tech-savvy solutions that you believe the creative economy can be able to merge and to look into when you're talking about the US and Kenyan collaboration? Because we see our students are not, our Kenyans are not the most tech-savvy. That's what they think than US. But we break banks through technology. So I always say when you arrest someone who has already broken the bank and broken those systems, it means you should employ them, not arrest them. So when we think of being tech savvy and where AI is taking us, then Kenya is one of the most tech savvy nations, taking into record of how many international hackathons that even our students and even our people have won, Safaricom being one of them. And KJ has already said that is one of the institutions is collaborating with when it comes to these agendas. So how can the creative industry look at technology? How can the youth be able to get into these? Can they leverage on AI when it comes to how we can work together as a country with the US?
Thanks, ZP. And as I had mentioned also before, I mean, I think right now, the intersection between creative economy and tech is really, I mean, everything is coming together. You can't speak of one without the other. As I said, IFPI releases the Global Music Report. Out of that income that I mentioned, $29.6 billion globally, 69% was from streaming. Streaming, digital music, tech. So you can see even in the music industry, we have evolved from the physical format to the digital format. So technology is right at the heart of it. And for me as a rights holder, I think what is critical is actually more of the opportunity, yes, is there. We really need to be able to, even as a government, have infrastructure in place, internet. I know internet in Kenya is quite good, but what about that accessibility to most of these people? What is the, how does somebody in northern Kenya be able to access this? Because that means that we can be able to have access to whatever is, majority of what the world is consuming right now. And with that accessibility, be it speed, be it affordability, we have to ensure, please, that the government ensure that this is a critical factor that at least the population is able to access. But at the end of it, the opportunity always exists with its own challenges, isn't it? So when you talk about AI, which is at the critical right now, KJ has spoken about large language models. And I think when you talk about these LLMs, it's really, really critical for the creative economy of the creatives behind this. And when it's feeding and training all these LLMs, we ensure that they actually have access and there's remuneration. We have basic copyright rules. There's exclusive rights for the rights holders. Balancing these interests. Yes, we want AI, we want to be able to feed the stories, but those stories have been told by somebody. And those stories are a lifeline to our rights holder. So how do we make that balance, even as we create our policies? Are we able to ensure that there's remuneration going to the people who have actually created what is feeding these LLMs and making sure that the AI is giving all this information out there? We have literary works, which is, of course, creative economy. We have people who have written these books. You know, when you talk about exceptions, for example, and TDMs, text and data mining, we have to ensure what is feeding all this tech. The people have first being able to be identified as the creators, which is the right of paternity for copyright, and the right of course, having an economic value of it. There's remuneration, compensation going back, because can you imagine that we are feeding maybe Apple Music with, for example, songs that are purely rather AI generated, but the AI generation is from a composer, a very famous jazz musician. So you can see that the remuneration will not go to the jazz musician, it goes to somebody else. So there's some sort of unfairness around that. So I hope as the policymakers are very excited and building on this AI, ensure that the rights holders or the creatives that have being able to feed or train these models are able to be rightfully compensated. When we have tech, I think it's really critical for us and the young people especially. I always joke that my daughter, usually even when I'm typing something on the phone, and she tells me, Mom, check on this. And I start typing, she's like, oh my goodness, you're so slow, you know? I never quite thought I'd be, you know, the old, how I used to see my parents, you know, is now what my 18-year-old is asking me, you know, I mean, bring that phone, let me show you how it's done. So these young people, I mean, it's so fast. You young people here, I mean, what you do now and what KJ here, who looks very young, and Ted here, we can't really keep up. We try to keep up, but the truth of the matter is the young people are so versatile and there's so much opportunity. And as Zippy had mentioned, Kenya is right at the heart of it. I mean, we have all the tech people. That's why we have the Googles coming in and setting up the Microsoft. So how do we leverage that and our skill building for our young people to actually leverage on that to be able to create even our own platforms, for example, and that skill building is really essential. And I think this partnership between the US and Kenya can really call or play an important, critical role in ensuring that our young people are leveraging on tech to ensure that the creative industry thrives.
Allow me to make an intervention on what Wakili is saying. We'll have to place responsibilities in the right places. Even for government, what we ask from government has to be what government essentially does. And the key big issues I think government would come in on would be on the space of policy. This is coming from the executive, and the space of legislation where laws are being made, and that would be in the legislature. And then, of course, you people in the judiciary have your place to now apply that law, especially in covering people on intellectual property and copyright and all these issues. However, to depend on government to be a creative would be a disaster. Governments do not create well, and they do not tell good stories. At best, what a government would do in storytelling is propaganda. And I use propaganda here not in a negative way. I use propaganda here noting that propaganda stems out of a Christian effort to spread the gospel, to propagate the gospel. Actually, that is the foundation of propaganda, where Christians were trying to put out the good word and put out the gospel. So government going into communication will try and propagate government agenda, to sell the development agenda, to sell their manifesto, to sell the progress and milestones of what they are doing. So it would be tragic to expect that creation will come out of government and depend on entities in government and individuals in government. It would take us to a place that we have been before. I remember that before the big turn in the early 2000s, that is heralded by the coming up of your Hardstones, your Kalamashaka, your Majizes. At that point, before that, if you were to look at the creative sector in Kenya, the dominant creative was government-driven choirs. I grew up in an era where we would be huddled into these mass choirs as primary school children to go and sing for the president at that time. And these mass choirs would, yes, produce some good melodies, but looking at them today, because I go back to YouTube to listen to the Nyayo music, that was pure government propaganda, packaged as art, packaged as music, and it had its effect because governments have tufts to protect. Politicians have tufts to protect. And so the point I was making here is, as we are placing responsibility, let the creative cut their own path and keep in their lane, and ask government to keep in their lane, because if we trust government to create, it will be dangerous. So what government can do is on the policy level, on legislation, and on facilitating for the creative and facilitating for the trade to happen. In facilitation, the opportunity that is so big right now is what government is doing in investing on the technologies you're talking about. An additional 100,000 kilometers of fiber going a last mile to every single ward is a massive investment that any person in Kenya should jump onto. This creation of 1,450 digital innovation hubs, meaning a digital innovation hub in every single ward of this country, serves as an opportunity for a creative and a storyteller to connect from the comfort of their village to the world. So basically from Kerigo village to the world. Thank you.
Thank you for that propaganda. I really want to follow up that question because one of the things the creatives will tell you is the digital tax is there for them, which is a good thing because we also need to pay tax so that we can be able to do what? We can be able to be recognized in the government data. However, when it comes to the government trying to negotiate with us for the creatives in terms of when you look at Spotify, Google, YouTube, the model they're using to calculate remuneration for, let me say Kenya, I don't want to talk about Africans, is way much lower. So here are innovation hubs being created, but we have seen government negotiating over things like Google, YouTube and stuff, but they're not negotiating on the remuneration that we should be able to be given. Where, let me say, for instance, out of, I don't know, they always say at 10,000 views, you can get 1,000 shillings as Kenyan. While the person in America, for the 10,000 views, they will get like almost 5,000 shillings. So how can government come in? Yes, we are still waiting for policy. We will not go into that. Today, we are not discussing policy. But these are some of the challenges that we are talking about collaboration between the US. And Drew, I'll bring that to you also. So how can we leverage on negotiating for creatives or better remuneration on these technology platforms?
Yeah, so, and I wanted to speak up just, again, following Angela all day long, but both of you referenced something that's really important. And I mean, aside from, like you said, getting into policy details, I do think when you talk about intellectual property rights, IPR, really a culture shift is important to understand. What you were getting at is, and this is for the United States, IPR has always been about rule of law and ensuring copyright protections. In the creative space, though, it is a revenue stream. It's a huge positive. It's how you make industries, right? And so I think what's really important is there's different ways to do it. The policy has to be worked out. It has to be worked out with the private sector that also has to make profits. But I do think that the most important thing is having a structured system that really works for artists who are risers, works for companies who are investors and facilitators, right? Most artists make it because a music distributor discovers them or is connected to them, and then they sign, and the artist benefits from most of the royalties, and then the company takes a fee as well. That's like kind of the basics of it. And so I do know, and I think as our team has talked with industry creatives, different folks here, I think there's a process that needs to happen in Kenya, and that makes that better. But I think what's really important is understand that it's a positive thing, that it's an industry growth thing, and that there's different players in it. It is artists, but also businesses. It is government, but also like kind of wider industry. I think the piece on tech is huge. We're very proud beyond creative economy to work on the tech partnerships you're talking about. Silicon Savannah and Kenya has been a leader for a long time on this continent and beyond. Our team right now, as we speak, is working on university partnerships between our leading folks in tech and commercialization in that space with Kenyan folks in your universities to build up those possibilities between us. And I'll use another anecdote. I think we were talking to Polycarp from South Seoul, and like things I learned when you think about tech, because I think it can be intimidating, right? In this new world we're entering into of like, where is this going to lead us from AI and all these other aspects that affect industries. But he used this cool example that I never would have thought of. And so in modern music, you're using sounds. And so many of them are digital sounds. I think there's a name for the packets of sound. But anyway, he gave this example of like, well, what if, and I felt like it had happened before, but like, let's say there's a musician on the lake in a very small community who has this really cool instrument that made this one sound. That sound may be what Beyonce needs, right? And so there's a market out there whereby if there's a way to facilitate that sound being copyrighted, protected for that artist, built into a business system, and then the producer for some huge artist says, oh my gosh, I have to have that. And there's a structure for that to all work. Everybody wins, and our countries are connected in ways that you couldn't even imagine. And I'll close with something that you said that I think is very important, which is authenticity. I think there's a fear sometimes that technology can stray away from authenticity. I would argue, I think one of the reasons U.S. Creative companies are interested in Kenya is because of the authenticity. We're desperate for it as a marketplace globally. And so technology should be, copyright IPR should be a way to capture authenticity, which is more marketable than ever. And also is us telling our stories, which is really important to us as individuals and certainly as artists. At the end of the day, artists are about something more than money. And that piece is how can I sell my authenticity while maintaining it and growing as an artist and a leader in the creative space. So those are some layers and that I think are really important that you touched upon.
Dagoretti, maybe you will want to give Big Ted an opportunity after I say what I'm just about to say. And it's to the question that you are asking about the place of government in the welfare of the creator and the artist. And you talked about two main things. You talked about taxes, and you talked about the policy and the framework and negotiating. And I need to say that the US, we are talking about the US-Kenya partnership. It is important for every creator, every artist to even realize, to recognize how the policy space works and even the trade space. Individuals deal with individuals. Corporations deal with corporations. Organizations deal with organizations. It is extremely difficult for an individual to sit on a bilateral discussion with a corporate. And so there is a very big need for structuring of this creative space in Kenya. What platforms are championing for the welfare and the rights of the artists? Because in the current setup, if you go into artists forum, the cacophonious noise that is in there is so loud that you may look for an engagement if you're an organization or a government or an entity and lack any platform to engage artists meaningfully. This is very, very important. I've seen very big efforts in the last 2 years, and we have to commend the relationship between Kenya and the US And especially, I would like to talk about Ambassador Meg Ryan. Ambassador Meg Ryan is of a tech extraction. She comes from Silicon Valley. And I saw her making real efforts to have a good relationship between the Kenyan cultural space and the US. And that is where discussions like the ones you're talking about, Daktari, started. Previously, the remuneration of artists in terms of the rights they would get and the remuneration they would get out of platforms that are American was non-existent. So even the little you're talking about came out of negotiations where the president sat across the table with the big tech companies in the US, and there was a negotiation about how many stops should be opened for the Kenyan creative, because you will go to either YouTube and find maybe there are probably 5 or 6 monetization stops, and you find that none has been opened for Kenyans. And as we speak right now, I would imagine the stops are being opened, even if it is 1 or 2, and these conversations are going on. So the point I'm trying to make here is, even as government goes to negotiate as a government with the other government, as organizations and corporates look for opportunities between Kenya and the US, how has the artist, the creator, the cultural enthusiast packaged themselves, organized themselves for this discussion? Because in the absence of organization and structuring, they're not on the table.
Thank you very much, KJ, for that. And true, I think when you say president, it will be important to say which president negotiated, but we will leave it there. What we know is that now
the recent negotiations that opened up monetization for Kenyan creatives was taken up by President William Ruto. And this was among the first things that he did when he got into office. It's an ongoing story. Many more steps will have to be taken. Much more will have to be done for monetization in this space. And even as that is happening, remember, it was this government that also had the big negotiation on the Skiza Tunes conversation. Big Ted, you remember how big that conversation was and how chaotic it would have ended up, because even as you're negotiating on the rights of artists, they themselves will never be able to present a unified front, a unified drive. And so when you have to make a negotiation for the welfare of artists, your first business normally is, how do you organize them? Because they're so scattered. And that's why I was saying Big Ted should come after this for his experience on how artists found themselves in the situation when the government was saying that they have some money during the COVID era for the artists.
Okay, thank you so much. Big Ted, you are going to be the last one to speak before we open the floor for questions. Right. And you are going to tell us more, of course, answering those questions. But also we need to remember, I think the last 2 years, the American Embassy has really been trying to have a lot of talks and roundtable forums with the Kenyan creatives. And through these creatives have been, and there are creatives within every sector, like film sector, fashion sector, music sector. Those roundtables have been able to inform a lot of knowledge within this space. And of course, we thank the government for having negotiated. Nowadays, we are able to earn from Facebook. Some of us, we are earning from Facebook. But those are some of the things that will make us want to say, can the policy be hastened? As I said, we will not discuss why, but can the policy be hastened? So Ted, please tell us, what is the space of innovation? What is the space of, you come in many fronts. As an ambassador, whether it is former ambassador, as an ambassador, you are in government or you're in the creative industry. What is the space of innovation for both parties in the creative industry?
All right, wonderful. I think I'll always be the point of reference to fact check stuff. Number one, let me speak about the state of the industry in Kenya and what we need to do to go to the next level. I am with KJ in saying that it's a work in progress. There are very many questions and concerns that even international investors in our sector have. And some of them have to do with IP, intellectual property, and they ask you, if I do this there, am I protected? Can I get the best out of it? Because remember, as an investor investing in anything, the IP has to make me earn money. But also that takes me to number two, even for Kenyan creators, let's not be in a hurry to sell off our rights, because the money is actually in you owning the rights. That is where the money is. It might not be now, but it shall be there in the future. So you owning it is much better than you selling it. Number three is for us to have platforms that can actually be able to sell. If it's not working, if you think YouTube is not working, in marketing, we have a saying, we say, having a good product and not telling people about it is like winking at a beautiful lady in a dark room. You know what you're doing, she does not know, even if she's interested. If you feel that the platforms that we have are not giving you the very best, then maybe we should invest in our own platforms. Maybe then we need to put Safaricom to test, or Airtel, or whoever, and say, listen, we want you to create a platform that when anybody goes on it to watch my content, I automatically get remunerated. Now, you need to understand the remuneration model of all these products when they made them. Now, I'll try and not talk too much because I've sat on privileged tables with information about the various things. But let me talk about something like the Grammys, for example. We complain and say, oh, we want more slots in the Grammys and everything. But remember that the Grammys were initially set up as an American award of their music. We only came in as visitors. Now we want a bigger share. And hence the need for us to create the Africa Grammys. All right? Whereby we shall have all these 321 sections, but for Africa. So it means Mogithi finally shall be on the Grammy table. Okay? So if we want an enumeration system, probably which favors us, without using the model that whatever it is. For example, YouTube would pay more to a kid in a garage in California than they'll pay you. Why? Because the algorithm is also backed up by advertisement. So if the advertisement is for McDonald's and we don't have McDonald's here, then there is no way that YouTube will pay you the same amount as they pay that kid. All right? So we need to understand where we're going into. Yes, I think there's still a disparity in the pays. I think we deserve more, but also we have to do more. Now, going back to the issue of pay to watch. You know very well the issue we've been having in this country where half the people with Netflix in their houses actually copied from their neighbors and their neighbors' neighbors. And right now they're trying to lock down on the VPNs, which are actually coming to your houses. Why? Because the only way we can be able to get value, or the investor gets value, is if everybody pays. So are you willing to pay for the service? Are you? All right. If you're willing to pay for the service, and if and when you start paying, then we shall be at a better place to negotiate for better and for more, because now it works commercially. But that having been said, I go back to what I told you. Eastern Central Africa, 760 million people. 80% of them have smartphones. What capacity do we have to sell our content to an audience that is ready and understands the content that you are making? So, ladies and gentlemen, the future is bright. And let me tell you, any solution that we make must be future-proof. It cannot be the current proof. Now, what would we want, or what would we ask? What would be our ask to the US and to the system around the US coming in? Number one, I would go for things like technology transfer. I know about the Digital Transformation Africa program, which the US government set up for Kenya, because they look at Kenya as a leader in technology. And we are blessed now to have a tech ambassador who sits in the Kenyan government. And we need to look widely and say, what are the things that we want? Number one, I would advocate for a more organized ecosystem. set up in different areas. For example, my friend Kim here intends to set up something, and they're looking to lobby. So they're looking to lobby lawmakers like you, KJ. Because if the bill comes to Parliament and the lawmakers have no idea about what they're lobbying for, they'll pass a bill which will not support the industry. It might look good and have a nice name, but it won't support the industry. What do we need? We need funds to help them achieve what they want. Why? Because if they achieve what they're doing, it means the investor who walks into Kenya from the States or from Hollywood or from wherever has an easier, because the path has already been cleared. We need a better ecosystem, organized. Yes, we need to organize all the sectors and get them well organized, that by the time we have an opportunity, it is actually rolling right into where it's meant to be. I finished by telling you this story. That's what I was actually going to say. A few years ago, and I think I can say this, money was allocated from the ministry to the president. So from the president to the ministry, or vice versa, to help the creative economy during COVID. Now, because of misinformation and a lack of it and understanding of what was happening, everybody decided that they are artists. Now, who is an artist in Kenya? If you're here, you play a guitar, how do we qualify you as an artist? A problem I had when I was in LA, I had this opportunity to sit with the Screenwriters Guild of America, and they told me, would want to work with your screenwriters. Can you give us a database? Now, I know we have a Screenwriters Association, but what about the other guy who writes but is not a member? Does he get funding? Does he get the support? Do we even recognize those leaders as genuine leaders? So this money was given, and every artist was calculating what they should get according to the numbers they thought they were. So for example, let's take a simple calculation. Music Corporate Society tells us there are 15,000 members. The amount of money which was given was 100 million. Remove 20% of which is retained for administrative purposes. We remain with 80 million. Somebody calculate for me, 80 million divided by 15,000. What's the number? We're in a university. I'm shocked. None of you can calculate. Professors, they've left. 15,000 divided by 80 million. When you come to the calculation, it will actually give you the reality of the matter. Now, 15,000 are only musicians. What about the guys who do comedy? What about the guys who do crafts? What about the writers? What about the filmmakers? So let's imagine all of us are 50,000. Please divide it for me by 80 million. How much money was everybody meant to get? So the problem came with the structure that we have as an industry. I want to tell you, because I went on the road, is somebody appeared with his family in Nakuru. He had a guitar, he had his wife, they had their children, and all of them said, we are musicians because we have composed a song. How do we help government calculate the number of people in our sectors so that if they're to give any support, we know what amount of money we require? Now, in the States, when they had the big strike for writers in movies, nobody wrote. Why? Because if you wrote and you need to be a member for you to be a writer to appear in a movie, then you'll be censored. So we do not have data. So second thing, we need support. We need money. We need finances. We need a lot of facilitation coming down to create these systems so that we have a robust system that when we get any sort of support, we are able to help. If I'm to bring tomorrow, let's say, for example, who's the biggest artist right now? Musician in the world? Taylor Swift. And we bring Taylor Swift, and they say, we want to meet 20 of the top musicians in Kenya. Now, I saw a brother here with a guitar. I don't know who you are. I don't mean you're not big, but I don't know who you are. So you would want to be in the room, but where is a registry where you exist? And I'm able to say, these are the people who need to be in that room. On that case, I've never been invited again to any event for the creative economy. I thought I was on the list, and I'm just joking. I'm just joking. But listen, what we need to do as an industry and as a country is systems. If we can get support, whether it's a scaled up effort, and the support we can get even from the United States is the best practices. Are we able to model our industries based on the best practices available in the States? Yes. Are you able to open the doors for us? Yes. That for me, I would take that any day before you give me any financial support. Why? When you give me the money, it will go to the right place. The last one and the final one. We need to leverage on technology. And to everybody who is here and who's listening and hearing my voice, technology currently, which is AI, and right now we're talking about ethical AI, is the future, the now. The future is already being designed. As Kenyans, we need to get into this algorithm. Let me give you as I finish. The algorithm works this way. If we pour into AI any information, AI will translate it into what comes out as information. How much are we pumping into AI from wherever we sit in this country? On Sunday, Nairobi is transformed into a mini Hollywood. Nobody has organized it, but there is a street for TikTok. There is a street for dancers. There is a street for fashion. There is a street, there are over 50 dance groups every Sunday with no fail in the city of Nairobi. Who is making sure that all that data goes into a system that in the future we'll call AI, and we are able to harvest? Ladies and gentlemen.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And now the floor is open. I don't want to summarize that. Hey, that's interesting. I like that. As a teacher, that is the best response you can ever get from a class. Great. So I will start with the 3 questions at a time so that we save on time. And if in any case your question is answered within the first 3, don't ask it again on the second round. Okay. So that is 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so you introduce yourself briefly and asking your question 60 seconds, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, distinguished panelists. My name is Stephen Nyaga. I'm a part-time lecturer at the Department of Diplomacy and International Studies. I would like to direct my question to Ambassador Ted Kwaka. The cultural imperialism theory presupposes that the dominant Western culture through the global media content assimilate other culture through film, and that leads to cultural homogenization and loss of identity, right? Cultural erosion, which is also a form of neocolonialism. How do you address that through the content that you're consuming? And please on the, comment on there's a story that was featured on CNN. Larry Madowo interviewed one of an African actor in Hollywood who featured in some of those top movies, but ended up being very poor paid, exploitation and all that. So we don't end up just telling one side of the story that, you know, how the Western maybe acting and media is good, but then again, we still have some serious
question.
problems.
Don't explain your question. So what's the question?
I've posed the question.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. And quickly, I'll answer it this way. You've tried to use very, very many words, homogenization and things like that. We shall leave that for the university lecturers to deal with. But what I'd like to tell you is, once you know something, you have no excuse. We know that we are playing second fiddle. Now, those things you just spoke about. Now, for America, the longest running TV show was Sesame Street. Do you know anything about Sesame Street? Yes. Do you know what that was? It was a cultural experiment. It was the first time that they put on one particular program different nationalities for them to understand what the market is saying. Now, since we know, what are you doing about yours? Because we cannot talk about what has been happening. We need to talk about yours. But also, let me speak about Hollywood. 99% of the movies made in Hollywood are for the American market. So you cannot go in there and demand a role, yet the movie has no one like you in it. And they don't understand your accent. So you may be a good actor, but there's no role unless they script it. So my thought and process has been this. For all script writers, how do we influence the writers to put in a role for you? And that doesn't come at the shooting of the film. It comes at the scripting of the film. One of the best writers in Hollywood is Perez Owino, a Kenyan lady who makes sure that in every film she writes, that there is a Kenyan language spoken, even 3 letters. So that is the way that we go into territories that are already owned. But a bigger one is, what about a Kikuyu movie? Do you want to tell me we have never done Wangwa Makeri until now? Luanda Magere has never been made until now. Koitalela Rapsomoy never made till now. Dead and Kimathi never made until now. So we can't blame others, and we know what we need to do, and we are not doing. Tomorrow, let us shoot, even if it is with a bad camera, like a Nigerian film, let's put it out.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah.
And if I may, and it just relates to the conversation going on, but I think also to your question, just I want to say 3 things. One, for us, again, I started this with, I'm a diplomat. Why are we in creative economy? Because our market leaders, our creative leaders have said Kenya is special. So if Kenya wasn't exceptional, unique, and bringing something that was valuable not only within this country but beyond, the businesses wouldn't be here. The creative network wouldn't be here, and it is. So that's point 1 of the power of Kenyan art, the power of Kenyan creatives. The other piece I would say is even within the United States, okay, I'll tell you one thing about our culture. We are incredibly competitive. It's built into the systems of who we are in so many ways. And so when we brought President Ruto to Atlanta, which happens to be my hometown, so very proud to welcome the delegation from this country there. Creative economy was a part of this, and he went to visit Tyler Perry's studios. Tyler Perry Studios is one of the largest movie studios on earth, and certainly in the United States. You thought they were all in Hollywood, right? So it's in Georgia. That's the other side. Georgia, where I grew up, was not famous for movies. In fact, 25 years ago, there wasn't much of a film industry at all. I bring that up to say, even within our own economy, our own creative ecosystem, there's a competition for methods and art that creates something new. And I would submit that Tyler Perry did both. He found a business model around aspects of volume and production that were competitive. And absolutely, he's one of the greatest storytellers on earth. And he brought storytelling that was different from the market. So I share that as within the United States, that type of competition happening. And the last thing, and I'll make this personal because I really think this is important. And I struggle with this with my team because we meet a lot with artists and talk about the struggles. My sister is trying to make it in Hollywood. She's been out there 10 years, okay? She's gotten some big breaks lately. I can't tell you the emotional roller coaster and the effort and the struggle to get there. And so my message to artists from anywhere, and I actually would argue this is something that unifies us in our culture, is that it is hard to make it, right? And that's part of what that creative journey is about. And it's holding on to the authenticity while making a living, and then maybe something else. Maybe you want a platform, you want to be famous for a reason. And so I just want to share that I don't think that's ever going to change. You know what I mean? Like all the things we're talking about are so important to build that infrastructure so that revenue leads to industries that lead to artist success. But I think it's really important to note too, like we're always going to love and admire Polycarp and Kipchoge and Faith because, oh my gosh, they did that, right? So I do think that that's a piece of it. And it should be that everyone can compete and that there's more more in the industry, more artists to have that access, but it's always going to be hard. It's hard in all of our lines of work. And so I just think that's an important thing to remember. And we have deep respect for that, you know. And so the artist journey, we respect that, you know, and understand the struggles.
Okay. So now what I'm going to do, no, the three. So before any question is answered, we'll ask the three, we'll write them down. It was you, then the first line. So we finish that first line, then we answer. Yeah, then is when we go to the next set of questions. Yes?
Thank you so much. The platform is very engaging and thought-provoking. My name is Wavinya Makai. I'm a student with the University of Cambridge, still with a Master's of Philosophy from of Development from the same university. And my question is about AI and cultural appropriation. Currently, we see generative AI taking development spaces in terms of creation. And generative AI is increasingly drawing its insights and from diverse cultural styles, mostly from the continent. So my question is to the two policymakers, Drew and KJ, is in the spirit of equitable development, what frameworks and policies are there in existence or are being worked on to ensure that the creatives who are going to AI to get their stories done get contributions which are in line with human rights, in line with their content of creation, despite the fact that we're still a developing continent? Thank you.
Thank you. Go to the next. Let's make our questions short so that they're able to be, yeah? No. It's the first line, yeah.
Thank you so much, the panelists. Also, I have two quick questions. The first one,
your name?
My name is Joseph Obel. I am a theater director and writer and also an actor. So my question ties on support, especially for theater. I didn't even hear any conversation on theater here. What would you want me to do differently so you could come to my show? Because KJ, I know you're a theater artist. I've never seen you in my shows, even Big Ted. And the next question is on database. Whose responsibility would you think it is to create a database? Because we've really tried as artists, and what we end up with is many existing groups, and we just want to be known by the government. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to defend KJ. He comes to my shows. In fact, he supports almost 30 youth to my shows every time. Yeah.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Joki Mohoho. I will first make a comment because apologies for being late, but being one of the leading film producers, not just in Kenya, East Africa, but Africa, I need to make a comment. Yeah. I'll summarize. Last year, Netflix didn't buy new content. Showmax didn't buy new content. DSTV bought just a few. I know because I have produced for DSTV since 2004, and I have produced over 1,000 episodes and over 75 films. So I know where I'm coming from. Neither has the US Embassy invited me to your focus group meetings. One thing I see as the biggest problem is whomever produced last year and this year, where are you taking your content? Yeah. So that aspect of IT technology, oh my, we need it like yesterday. I have just developed a course for Kenya and Nigeria, production through gender equity lens. And today is the deadline for applying, and it is free. Please apply. I used a lot of AI because I had to develop like over 15 modules, and AI helped me a great deal, as well as my knowledge in the industry. Now, my question is, even with that, there's a lot going on, and yes, AI, we need to feed it with a lot of our own stuff. I've been talking to AI like I'm going cuckoos. Like, no, that doesn't work in Africa. Try again, you know? So we need to feed this AI. What do we need? Now, nice point for the US Embassy. Many years ago in my other career as a management consultant, I was part of your training for development program, fantastic program. You took us to states, but not to sit in class and just do exams and all that. We were partnered. We were even asked, whom do you admire out there? Journalists were taken from one leading newspaper to another. 3 months of traveling and making personal contacts. That's what we need in this industry. Because I was trained also in film in the heart of Hollywood at Universal Studios. The American model is not our African model. We need to have our brains opened to being culturally proud and knowing copying America or taking the template of America is not necessarily what's going to work for us. And you, all of you young people, I'll call you young because I'm much older than you, we need to go back to our roots and tell our stories. We're not telling enough. I too, plus into my CV, I'm also one of the Kikuyu kind of leaders, elders, and that's something I keep trying to fight for. KJ? Yeah, that go authentic. Our stories are not being told. Let me conclude with this. I'm one of the few Africans who are members of the international Emmys. I'm just about to start the jury work for this year. I've been a juror for the last 6 years. And only once or twice have I seen content from Africa, the middle of Africa. I've seen a few from Arab countries, and maybe 1 or 2 from South Africa. We don't even get there. So the first time I went there, I stood up and I said, I am from Africa. Who is International Emmys? TV series that's not American. So we are competing with Europe. We are competing with Argentina, Brazil, Korea, and all that. Do we have a hope in hell? Not when there's only one production going out there. We need to flood the area. I stood up and I asked them, what do you want to watch from Africa? I had people come to apologize to me. I'm sorry, ma'am, we know very little about Africa. One person told me, I only know about Kibera. So we are not blowing our trumpet loud enough. Being a member of the Emmys is expensive. Not everybody will afford $1,000 and more every year. And to go to New York, I've only managed once. Yeah, I won't even manage this year. So back to this partnership. Call it affirmative action of some sort. How can you give us a little bit push, a little bit kick, and then we do the rest?
Thank you, thank you. I don't need to add. I feel like she partially answered your question, Makai. Yeah, so we can address the second part of it.
Just to note a few things. One, thank you for sharing about your experience going to the United States. And one of the things that our team works on that we're very proud of, and frankly, this is really important. People noted this people-to-people diplomacy. It's uncontrolled. All we know is if we send Kenyans to America, everything's better in terms of the partnership when you come back with relationships. So we send 300 Kenyans every year just through U.S. government exchange programs. Kenya's number 3 on the continent for African students studying in U.S. universities. Your dynamic contribution is incredible. And I'll go back to Winnie and at the beginning, it's just been an example in you is that relationship building is priceless and it leads in directions that are basically about the 21st century. We can't even predict. And I do want to emphasize, I think you made a really good point about when we're, say, building through exchange programs for relationships and networks, it's not because you're going to copy America. It's at all. It's really about 2 things. Are there best practices that are applicable? And then is there a network we can build that's about value that maybe isn't even in the States that's here? And I noted when we kicked this thing off that I think what we're looking for here is your own consumer market growing as a key part of growth for business, for artists, for our partnership, right? And so absolutely the notion of having a strong Kenyan consumer market, I think we advocate for that because that grows the industry for all. And I think your content is globally competitive. And so it will probably link to our industries. And that's also just a really good thing. So I think, So I just really think that our view is Kenya is a contributor. How do we facilitate that? And how do we build those relationships further? And we want to keep working on that. But it's really about the network building, and it needs to be a 2-way street. Absolutely. So thank you for bringing that up.
All right, thank you very much. No. Just a minute. Let's finish with the round of questions. So we had a question from Abel, which is going to be answered by Angela. Then she'll also answer one of the questions from the people who are online. And then KJ will also complete the question and also answer another question from online. And if we still have time and you're patient on your seat, then we will take another round of questions. Okay? Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, ZP. I think for Joseph, I'll answer the second question on the database. I think, and you're asking, I think it was targeted to the government, but I'm private sector, but I know that at least for the copyright industry, we have the Kenya Copyright Board, which has a voluntary registration system. Currently, of course, you know that copyright doesn't, it's not like other IP rights where you need registration to protect your work, but you just register to be able to identify that. But on a regional level, we have now Flexing Bank through the CANEX program. They're actually in the process of creating this database for the region where people can be able to now access and get all these what Njoki is saying and be able to access the various content and sort of a monetization commercialization aspect of the creative industry. So there's work in progress at a local level just to be able to have that database. The government is doing that, but also privately the various associations also have database of their own various sectors of works. We have Rachel Wanaina also online who has mentioned that she said identifies there is a big gap in having updated industry conditions papers accessible to help entrepreneurs in the creative space make great business decisions. What are industry leaders such as IFPI doing about this? Yes, data is always an issue. I think that is granted. Even as IFPI, I mean, I sit here in Nairobi. I'm the regional director for the Sub-Saharan Africa region. But even in the report itself, the Global Music Report, we only pull out for the region of 46 countries, we only pull out South Africa and Nigeria as potential, as one of the two main countries. Yes, we have been fighting for Kenya, but the data is not really concrete enough for it to be pulled away as an independent country, as a country. So Kenya is part of the rest of Sub-Saharan Africa. But I think it's really critical for various industries, and the government has been actually working through, which government? Is it Kiarie? Is not Kiarie. One of the data government agencies, KNBS, National Bureau. I know that they have called us for and have tried to start collating information for the creative industry. So slowly data is coming up. But for the private sector, for example, IFPI has this data, not for as Kenya, but as a region, and it's accessible online. There is the standard version that is available to everybody, but there's a premier version that now is sold if you really want to go deep into the information. Yes, it can be a bit costly, but you can always, depending on what level you are, various rates for different levels of industry players, be it even stakeholders, be it government, be it private sector, academia. So that's accessible for the recording industry. And I'm sure each industry has its own data set, but locally, I think it's important also for the government to step in sometimes, because collation of this data is also very expensive. And maybe that's one of the things that we can be able to work with the US to ensure that there is data for the country for us to make informed decisions and informed investments of where people need to put in the money and have that, the ball rolling, or the whole 360 investment in it. I know we said as much as there's a creative industry and we are passionate about creating, at the end of the day, without money flowing in the industry, there's nothing that's going to be able to happen.
Thank you very much. And the questions were amazing. And allow me, ZP, to start out on the conversation that was brought up on AI, and Joki also mentioned that. And us not having enough time to just unpack the whole AI, creative and culture conversation, I think it would be important to say that we all will have to see AI beyond just a buzzword, because it is sounding like a buzzword today. Everybody has something to say about AI from their point and perspective. First things first, AI is not even new. Conversations about AI were happening as early as 1930. I would imagine by 1950, people like Alan Turing who has a big center in the UK, the Alan Turing Center, were already writing very extensively about AI. So the first point is that AI is not new. What has happened is that the development starting the year 2019, 2020, 2021 has been so exponential that everybody now is rising up and taking cognizance of the power that AI has. And it is important to say that the change that AI will effect on personal life, on community life, on national life, and even the global stage is so profound that if it hasn't occurred to us how profound AI is just about to change humanity, maybe I might just want to equate this to the last time that humanity was at this place where we are. And this was at the time when nuclear and atomic energy was being explored as a possible front for humanity to walk into. And at that time, humanity realized just how much potential there was in the nuclear energy. But they also saw the dangers that nuclear was presenting. And at that time, humanity had to pause and decide what they're going to do with the nuclear energy. And in fact, that was what gave rise to the discussions, the workshopping, the protocols, the conventions, and the treaties that came, and largely driven that time by the UN. Now we are at the same point in the history of humanity, where AI presents as such a great opportunity for all sectors of humanity. But it is also, in every sense of the word, an existential threat for humanity. Today, what we are talking about is not the stuff of Star Wars or sci-fi movies. Today, there are great developments being done towards autonomous weapons. Autonomous weapons would mean that robots, computers, and algorithms can make decisions on weapons that can existentially destroy, can potentially destroy entire cities, entire nations, and so on. So I think the question that you brought about AI is a very important question that we all need to now just stop taking AI just as a buzzword and see it for the import, the opportunity, and the threat that it presents. Just 2 weeks ago, Kenya launched its AI strategy. And this was profound. Maybe we all didn't take note, but this AI strategy is going to inform the next steps in the development of policy, in the development of legislation, but more importantly, on a Kenya-US discussion. There is a great opportunity here, and it is happening in many fronts. I've seen Kenya workshopping with South Korea, Kenya workshopping with China, Kenya workshopping with the UK on matters AI. This is an extremely low-hanging fruit for the US-Kenya partnership to have a structured conversation on what opportunity AI presents for this Kenya-US partnership. It's important because if we, and this is to answer Joki, if we wait for anyone else to come and organize us, no one will. It is not in the interest of the US to come and organize artists in Kenya. It is not in the interest of the US to come and structure us for our storytelling. It is also not in the interest of the US to come to Kenya and develop our technology. We ought to ask ourselves, what are we doing with the technology that is already given to us and availed to us? Before AI, the precursor to AI for us has been social media. I want you to go into our social media space today and just ask yourself, the discourse that is happening on our social media platform, is that the best that Kenya can do? And I am not talking about the banter between Raya and government, or the people and their president. I am talking about even the conversations between ourselves as Kenyans and our engagement. What is that level of engagement there? Today, I would not be wrong to summarize it as an extremely toxic environment. Very toxic. How much creation are we doing in that space? How much of our aspirations are we forwarding in that space? And just take an example that compares oranges for oranges, apples for apples. Go to Kenyan TikTok and juxtapose it against Chinese TikTok. We had an opportunity when there was that threat for shutdown in the US for all of us to have a sneak preview on Red Note to see what Chinese are doing with the same technology that we are using here, not for so much good. And you realize that the conversation that we need to have is an internal conversation before we even have a conversation with our friends, our neighbors, and our partners, because it is not in their interest to organizers or developers. It is us who should take the responsibility and say, in the words that Big Ted put, that at this point, as a country, as Kenya, can we now just say that it is not our time to look east or to look west? It is our time to look within. And from within, then we shall realize that the problems that we are over-glorifying on social media, key among them, unemployment, because it is big. Today, there are so many developers graduating out of JKUAT. They are as good as anyone out of Stanford in Silicon Valley. If that is the knowledge they have, how is it being channeled and to what is it being focused on? Because with such knowledge, then Kenya can start asking the questions, the big questions that would place us on the global stage. Why is it that we do not develop our own mobile phone? We do not develop our own internet platforms. We do not develop our own TikToks. Why is it that we do not even have an ambition to be in the celestial space so that today, Njoki as a developer is depending on whatever satellites that have been put out there for her to have an opportunity to get her content onto DSTV? What is that is stopping Africa from shooting its own satellites into space with all the knowledge and expertise and all this fervor that we have about Gen Zs and their technical know-how? Why is it the conversation not being about how do we invest in the R&D, the research and development, where we are asking government, please, government, stop feeding us with all these academia and theoretical jargon.
Thank you.
Yes. How about
not full government?
How about? No, it's true. It's true. How about if we then would ask, how are we changing our education system to be future-proof, as Big Ted is saying, so that we can capture the opportunities that are available? And Joki asked a very critical question. If you will look at the tape before you came in, we did talk about how to onboard African content, its heritage and cultural traditions onto the fourth industrial revolution. Thank you.
Okay, now I just want to say one, according to our schedule, we have only 1 minute left. Let me start with that. So,
allow me, please, and it will be very short because this speaks to why we are here. The question that you placed on what concrete actionable plans for Kenya-US partnerships, I think even just stepping out of this room, we should, ZP, the most low-hanging fruit is to find opportunities where these discussions happen. Structured opportunities. Let us find out how do we workshop these Kenya-US partnership so that we are able to set the parameters, so that we are able to say, these are our aspirations, the aspirations for Kenya, the aspirations for the US, and here is our work plan and our action points starting from here. Going forward. Thank you.
30 seconds, Steph.
Quickly, just to bring you back to the whole issue, and anybody interested in AI, the US, through the Digital Transformation for Africa program, which places Kenya at the top of digital technology, we have something called ethical AI. You need to check that out. That is where what you are asking is coming in. And in terms of everything that is being put on AI. But also let me question the Kenyans, just to ride on what KJ has said. When we tweet 10,000 times a day a particular name, what do you think that happens to that name with the algorithm? It goes to inform the AI that you're talking about. So you are the ones who are actually recreating the AI path that is there. But forget about that. How do we do this? Kenya produces 350 games every year. Do you know that? Video games. Only one of them makes it probably to a different platform, and it's mechanized and made into something else. What happens to the rest? Do you know there's a video game of driving matatus through the town and you race? Now, video games or gaming is actually going to be in the next Olympics as a sport. But what criteria have they given? In LA, again, let's go. So what they said is the country with the most players gets to choose the game. Now, what if Kenya takes 1,000 players and we decide we shall drive the matatus in that Olympics? What if we decide that those games, we register 1 million people on those platforms, and we decide that those games will have Kenyan advertisements, we'll have Kenyan clubs, Kenyan cars, Kenyan everything. Guys, that is how to influence the future.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, Drew has something to say.
Drew,
before you answer the question, though this question, I feel you have also answered it. Your question has been asked in a group for you, and it's been sent as a document, by the way. Question for Drew Giblin. I'll read it and you'll answer it in 1 minute. In a global environment shifting from unipolarity to multipolarity and from free trade to protectionism, how can Kenya's creative economy, specifically the film industry, position itself as an equal partner in international cultural diplomacy, ensuring that our 60-year collaboration not only builds profitable creative ventures with US investments, but also safeguards Kenya's cultural agency, especially given the past imbalances, although I feel it had been answered partly. Number two, as trade and commerce in the cultural creative industries become increasingly tech-driven, how can the Kenya-US partnership be leveraged to champion investment in locally developed creative technologies that support equitable market access, data sovereignty, AI, and cultural preservation? This is by Ezi Onyango. He's currently the chair of Kenya Film and Producers Association. And these questions are for you.
Yeah, okay. So real quick on the international environment, I appreciate the question. Perfect last question for an answer that is where I started. The answer is, how in this environment does Kenya's creative economy succeed vis-a-vis the United States? The power of Kenya's creative economy, your market being valuable, the power of American creatives and attracting them, and the power of our shared interests. And this is not me being tongue-in-cheek. It is about shared interests. That's what partnerships are built on. And the good news for Kenya is you are the regional leader and African leader, and you've established yourself already, and we're very proud to have helped or been a part of your journey for 60 years, and you've been a part of our journey. And so there's much to be built on. The partnership will grow. Dynamics change. That's always going to be the case. I would also return to the point I made earlier, which is in 2050, 1 in 4 people on Earth are African. Guess what? The dynamics will be different then too. And I actually love meeting with young Kenyans to try to glean somehow what that future will look like, because it will be defined by people here. And we want to be a part of that conversation and that journey. On the tech, and I'm not sure if I got the question all correctly, but I know we've had a lot of conversations about tech. The U.S. relationship with Kenyan innovation is long and connected to the private sector and through universities, and we want to continue advancing that. So we are able, in some cases, to directly engage as the government. That's rare. We want this to be about people-to-people ties, institutional ties. Jennifer and I talk about this all the time. Most of our universities are here not because I told them to be, because they want to be here. And they want to partner with institutions that are leading in Africa and that are touching upon spaces that are vital to understand in terms of research and development in other areas. So we facilitate that. We want to keep convening those bridges. Sometimes we have a direct engagement to make that happen, but more often than not, our universities are here because they want to be. And so I think that's a way that we can continue to build that platform and encourage folks that I get to connect with to come to the forums that we build, and you will be invited, by the way, to continue these conversations together. And then what was the last question? Is that everything?
Yeah.
Okay. If this is kind of the closing word, I would just say that I really appreciate everybody up on this panel talking about these issues. We have turned first to Kenyan experts when we began this adventure of creative economy, and it's driven by the market, but really fueled by the partnership that we already have as cultures, as countries, and as people. And so we want to continue the power of that connection. But I also know, I mean, one thing I've learned 2 years of being here, for all Kenyans, families, communities, for young Kenyans, results, right? That's what you want. And I maybe would answer that too about today's international environment is, how do we get to results? And how do we talk transparently about what we need and what's possible and what's not, and what structures need to be built and how we do it? And so we try to be very transparent as we work on this process in creative economy to say that there's a US interest here. There's a commercial element, and there's artists with capabilities. And so we need to put the pieces together, but it has to be that, right? Nobody can just sort of invent the solution. It's going to come from partnership, negotiation, and making it happen, and looking for stars out there who are going to create paths. So thank you.
All right. Since people are saying their final words, I will just let them say their final words. It's 12:30. If we take any question, they will answer. Imagine every question they're answering for 10 minutes. It's not you, it's them. So, because I know they'll answer for too long, I'll just want them to give their final words. Yeah. So, Angela.
Thanks, Zippy. Before I give my final word, just 3 seconds of what Wavinya had asked a question about culture and AI at its feeding and any policies in place. And I just wanted to mention that there are treaties that countries usually sign to have the minimum standards for these to be in each country. And the latest one by the World Intellectual Property Organization is the Traditional Knowledge and Cultural Expressions Treaty. So it's up to the countries to ratify that treaty and ensure that each government at least is able to have those minimum standards to ensure that at least any cultural expressions, any TK, any traditional knowledge is actually remunerated, and other issues that can be able to be. So you can look into that and see how that policy can assist. And to close, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you to Doc. Thank you to the US Embassy. Thank you to the panelists here, government, Big Ted, and of course you, ZP. And most importantly, for you actually listening here physically and also online. I think it's really critical conversations like this that drive the industry, and we're able to discuss the challenges, discuss the opportunities, and from this we're able to actually get the ball rolling and ensure that there's at least sustainability. At the end of the day, I think each stakeholder has a role, be it government, be it private sector or other stakeholders. I think it's very critical for each stakeholder to just stay on their path and do what they need to do and have their mandates. And to this particular one, I would like to just raise the issues that would be, for example, in the music industry, where you can have challenges where the government is overreaching in particular private sectors. I think it's very important for government retaining your policy making. Let the private sector run. Let them be able to handle their own issues. For example, copyright is a private right, so let the private sector players be able to run with it. So with that, thank you everybody, and God bless you.
I want to thank you and the organizers of this seminar. Amazing, eye-opening. And in fact, I think my best session was when we opened the plenary for questions. I wish we had more time to hear more questions from the panel. I think for me, my final words are: one, I think there is a great opportunity in the Kenya-US partnership for mutual growth, mutual development, mutual opportunities. And it will take each partner to organize, order, and tidy up their space before they come to the table, and vice versa. I also think that coming out of this discussion and seminary here, being centered at the Center of African Studies at the university, there could be an opportunity for us to develop next steps coming out of this and start out with just what we have at the moment. See what is the next opportunity for a workshopping of ideas. What is the next opportunity for immersion, mutual immersion? See, is there an opportunity for the US to immerse itself in the cultural space, the storytelling space of Kenya, and vice versa? Because the knowledge transfer, skill transfer, technology transfer is a big one. The other takeout for me is something that has been said here by each and every one of the panelists. The world that we are coming into is a very different world. And allow me to say this even as I'm answering the question that was asked on theater. That today, there is nothing that exists as a human enterprise that is exclusive of technology. If you're in education, it is edutech. If you're in medicine, it is medtech. If you're in business, it is biztech or fintech. It is the same with art. So for those of us who are still in theater, we've got to think how Ngugi wa Thiong'o used to think in the 70s. In the 70s, Ngugi wa Thiong'o needed to tell a story. He was elite as elite can be. He was a lecturer at the University of Nairobi. But because the spaces were not availed for him to stage at the National Theatre, to stage in these big theaters, what did Ngugi wa Thiong'o do? He went to Kameretho, his village, and he got villagers, organized those villagers into a performing troupe. These villagers were not depending on his mind to write the scripts. In fact, he was workshopping his scripts with villagers. There were no mama mbogas then. He'll go to a farmer. He'll go to a teacher. He'll go to a nurse in the village and tell them, come and be part of my script. Let us write this story. And he ended up telling stories that were so relevant, so contextual to his space. So if the opportunity offered for him was the Kameretho swamp on your way from Limuru to Nakuru, what is the opportunity offered for the theater player today? And there are such great opportunities for theater to not only live on stage, but to also get its space from stage and be projected onto the platforms that exist in technology today, so that you will not be asking me, KJ, why have you not been to my show? Because I do not know about your show. I will have already known about your show from the opportunities provided, because every artist living in any given epoch has a dominant media that they have to exploit. There are those who came before us who had to exploit radio. There are those who came in our time who had to exploit TV. There are those who had internet at their disposal. Today, the platforms are so proliferated and there's so many out there for each and every artist or player in sector for them to springboard their art from. I want to thank every participant in this seminar, and I'm looking forward to being part of this conversation going forward. We must thank the organizers from Kenya. We must thank the team from the United States Embassy. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd actually given my 2 minutes to KJ, but ladies and gentlemen, first of all, to thank the U.S. Embassy for reaching out. This is one of the platforms of people diplomacy, where we get to sit with each other and just share ideas. This is key, the key pillar right now in the diplomatic world. Number two, to the Kenyan creative industry. When you sit with winners, the conversation is different. At the top, we are collaborating. At the bottom, you're fighting. So for us to sit with the United States, which is a winner in that particular area, the key word will be collaboration. So thank you very much. God bless you. Have a great day.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you very much. I think the takeaway for many of the artists is the persistence also is key, whether you are in the States or whether you are in Kenya or in Africa. If you do it once, you're not an artist. You have to be doing it enough times. But then I think we have too many questions, so we need another session. And I see a lot of the questions were aligned to AI. Maybe we can have US-Kenyan collaboration in the AI space in merging creativity and technology. Yeah, and I'll be moderating. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a comment here. We like giving people their flowers. Kevin Bayagi, this is to you, Big Ted. He says, allow me to give Big Ted his flowers. He told me 5 years ago, always be on the dance floor when music plays. You can always dance. And that's why I don't miss such forums. I am an artist and making it. So somebody, 5 years ago was which year? 2020. That's COVID time. Yeah, so receive your flowers. I think, ladies and gentlemen, that was a nice session. This was virtual, so we hope that the others can be able to get it online, because someone has asked, is there any possibility to devolve this dialogue to continue? So maybe if you can have it on your YouTube channel and have the comments, maybe, we will appreciate. Thank you. Yes, the questions can be sent. How do they send it? You'll tell her. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. We really appreciate all the panelists for your time, for your day. And also, I think, personally, I'm just excited that we are having a discussion on creativity in diplomacy. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Another round of applause for the panel. So this is why we have such conversations. You have seen how meaningful and how impactful it has been. So I want to say a very quick vote of thanks to the panelists, to the team from the US Embassy for being a very good partner. And what I want to conclude with, as Africa Center for the Study of the US, this is one of the many conversations we are having, because we noted that diplomacy is about bringing people together. It's not just about government actors and diplomats, it's bringing everybody together. And just to give you an illustration of what we have been doing, last month we had something similar on US-Kenya partnership in digital economy. Yeah. Now we've had creative economy. The next conversation is on diaspora partnership and how the diaspora can plug in. And so I look forward to hosting you for the next events. I know we'll be interacting more. One of the key takes I've taken is from KJ's point. There's something, Mheshimiwa, you said about having a conversation on AI, creative economy and culture. Yeah, this needs to be unpacked. And for sure, you will be hearing us reaching out very soon to unpack this conversation. So on behalf of the University of Nairobi community, asanteni sana. Thank you very much for coming.